I think we're live.
We should be live. Check the pulse.
Yay. All right.
He's dead, Jim.
Oh, darn it. Well, we're going to do it anyway because it's Ghost doing it this time, I guess. That should have been Halloween, not now. So it doesn't make any sense. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. From Beyond the Grave.
One for the reverb and one for the echo. Just because you have to have two effects buttons.
Remember, sometimes when you use those effects on this show, the whole thing crashes and burns. So careful now.
We just spent the whole effects budget.
Darn it. It was so worth it, though. Totally worth it. All right. Well, if we're set to go, then we should go.
We should go. Let's go in 3, 2, 1.
This is The Topic is Trek, episode 172 for Friday, November 22nd, 2024. Coming up in this episode, a new Trek movie, Inches Closer. A surprise gift for the 30th anniversary of Generations. We visit the worst starbase ever. All that and more right now on The Topic is Trek. Shape War. Welcome to The Topic is Trek, the podcast that runs on impulse power. Join us for a journey where no show has gone before. If it has to do with Star Trek, there's a good chance we'll talk about it sooner or later, because on this show, the topic is Trek. Engage already. And hello and welcome to another thrill-packed edition of The Topic is Trek. I am Clinton, one of your co-hosts for this show and most of the shows. Joining me from parts unknown, hopefully with a hip new catchphrase, but it's kind of putting him on the spot because it's Mr. Chuck Tomasi.
Chad lives to dog another day.
Ooh, that's oddly specific, but very appropriate for this episode. And Mr. Craig Stepp is away on a mission, and hopefully he's not going to go AWOL like certain admirals we know have done very recently on Lower Decks.
His hip new catchphrase next time is, I just flew in from Ceti Alpha 5, and boy, are my armpits full of sand.
It's the Gondon spot he went to. I don't remember whether or not we had a chance to talk about this the last time, or certainly to acknowledge it. I think it happened right around the time we were recording, but we wanted definitely to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Tony Todd.
Yes, very sad.
Indeed. Tony had a long career. I can't say I ever saw his performance in Candyman because I don't do that type of movie. Mm-hmm. But certainly he made his mark on Star Trek. 3 roles, and it's interesting because to me the role that stands out is really when he's playing old Jake Sisko.
Really?
Yeah, that performance just
for you.
Out to me.
It was a good performance, but I think I'm going with the popular vote of Worf's brother Kern.
Okay, I can certainly understand that. That's good that we have choices. And he also did had an appearance in Voyager, although in complete makeup, so you couldn't recognize him just from his face.
Was he the Klingon when Riker and the Klingons did the exchange program? Was he the one that said, I will try your dead burnt bird meat? Was that a different actor?
I think it was a different actor, but
I hear his voice when I say that.
There's somebody there screaming into the void if we're wrong about that one. We'll hear about it.
Yeah, sorry, we have loads of trivia in our heads, but not all of it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'll talk about that a bit when we get to something else we're going to be discussing in a little while. But right now, it's time to head out on our main mission. First main mission with an appropriate sound effect.
Oh, I thought we were going to spin the wheel of Charlie first. Sound effect, sound effect, sound effect. We'll go with the Atavachron so we're properly prepared.
Okay.
There we go.
I just
I feel refreshed.
was gonna use some decon gel instead, but that's okay.
Oh, that's coming up.
All right. So you want to give us the lowdown on what we're talking about first?
Absolutely. Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5, Episode 5. It's Cinco de Lower Decks,
Yeah, that.
titled Starbase 80 with the
That
question mark and exclamation point.
mm-hmm.
Had to have that in there. Written by May Darman and directed by Bob Suarez. So it goes something like this, according to my pathetic notes. We find the crew just beaming back from an assignment to a water planet. I didn't catch.
Yeah, well, either it was a water planet or they definitely were doing something involved with water because they're all taking off their wetsuits except Boimler, who apparently can't make it work.
He's struggling like Charlie Brown in this thing. It was a fun scene. They get called to the bridge, who is also still wearing their wetsuits, and there's water all over the floor.
I know who's mopping that stuff up. Got to get scruffy in there all of a sudden. I don't know.
And they get a message from Cetacean Ops that says their navigational computer is off and it's zapping the whales. So that wasn't much fun.
Although it's always fun to see Kamalu and Matt, doing their thing down there.
When they're rendered unconscious, they turn to Boimler, who's at the helm, and say, we only have impulse power.
Yeah.
And the only place that's within impulse range is Starbase 80, which we've heard much of in the series.
Yes. And
in there.
And Mariner's reaction is appropriate. She just screams until it fades out.
Are you gonna do that the whole trip? No! I was looking at Wikipedia, and that was one of the quotes.
A lot of O's.
Had a lot of fun with that. We come back from the opening credits, and we see Starbase 80, and it looks like your normal Starbase, but it looks like it's hasn't been occupied in a while or maintained.
Well, I thought it was interesting that you get, I don't even think this is like a homage to, I think this was literally the music cue
Yes.
when the Trek crew in Star Trek II boards Regular One and it's deserted. That is exactly the cue they use.
Very Psycho-esque. I said the same thing. I love that con-like music, if it wasn't con music itself. But it's Starbase 80. So they get aboard and they can't transport. They can't transport because
there's problems with the transporter.
Problems,
of course there are.
With the transporter. So they have to use the gel. And of course, when there's transporter problems, you cut to the Enterprise Season 1, Episode 1, where they're gelling each other down. And I'm going, oh, please, no.
And Boimler makes the immediate, I'm look at me, I'm all T'Pol. Yeah, okay. No.
Yeah, I'm total T'Pol over here.
No.
And Ransom is just loving it. Slathers it all on, and Mariner makes a comment like, you probably shouldn't use that much. Oh, yeah, that's
the stuff. Yeah.
So they managed to get aboard. I believe it was Ransom, Freeman, Boimler, Mariner. There were Tendi, and there were some other tertiary characters that made their appearances throughout the episode as it went on. And we're introduced to Cassia Knox, the diplomatic liaison.
I get the impression she was the captain. Was she the?
That's how she introduced herself.
But we never see a captain, and we know that there must be a captain because that's where all the other universe Freeman got banned to.
Yep, and that plays into the storyline as well. But yeah, and her closing made it feel like she was the captain as well. But I thought that was an interesting introduction. And to make it complete, she's wearing an Enterprise era uniform.
Not ironically, that's just what she has to wear,
And they say, hey, we need navigational computer. Oh yeah, we'll take you up to see Lieutenant
Well,
Jakubowski,
well, you gotta see the chief engineer.
the chief
Of
engineer. That's how they introduce him to.
course,
So
she's also thinking that the Cerritos is here to do repairs on
right
the
there's
station.
at this point we break into two teams with
Right. So
Freeman and Ransom trying to track down the chief engineer, and uh, Mariner doesn't want any part of this. Says, "How about you go with Knox?" And she goes, "How about I go back to
yeah.
the Cerritos and have nothing to do with any of this?" So she's desperately trying to get out of it, but she cannot. So
And
she
Rutherford is all upset because he was hoping when he got here to be like all this cool new tech, and he says everything's just old and weird on this station. And we're introduced to the very first thing of that because they get to engineering.
Well, Mariner is convinced this place is cursed. She says,
Oh,
"Oh,
well,
I spent time here.
yeah.
It's cursed. You're going to
It
see."
turns you into it turns you into an idiot after a while. You just go crazy.
So, what was the first thing was something sparked and blew up, and
Well,
they're in the
yes.
hall. She goes, "See, it's cursed."
Yeah, there's a guy in the hallway, and he's using a welding arc or something to try to fix something, and it explodes.
Yep.
And he just slumps over. He's an idiot. He's just going, well, okay. I'm resigned to this happening. Sure.
So Rutherford, Mariner, Knox, they make their way towards the reactor room, and Knox just grabs this pole and flies upward, which I thought was they're like, what? So they grab the pole and fall upward because the gravity plating is all wonky in the reactor room.
Hmm. But fortunately, Rutherford is able to, figure out right away what the problem is. It's just like he states the obvious. There's a problem with the plating and it's reversed and so forth. And he tries to contact Billups about this, and Billups gives this warning and stuff.
Like he just walked off the set of Thriller.
Yeah, and key plot point there is that Rutherford's badge gives him a static shock.
Right. And they say, "What's wrong with Billups? Oh, maybe the burrito he had didn't agree with them, but he's still on the ship."
Right. Well, Mariner also points out that I thought he only ate hot cereals for breakfast. I'm thinking, how do you know that? And anyway,
it's one of those specific things.
But we also find out in here that we've already had this the Enterprise uniforms, but in here we've got a wall comm just like on the TOS Enterprise, and we're also getting other visual cues to TOS because those cross beams in the ceiling have that kind of iridescent pattern to them.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah,
so you are very observant.
They've got that whole thing going on there. The crew is dressed in different uniforms depending on, I guess, what is available.
And Tendi even made a comment. Well, we find out that they don't have food replicators; they have food vendor carts. And here's Chad selling corn dogs.
Yeah. Oh, well, he's selling corn dogs, but I don't know if I'd want those corn dogs under the best of circumstances. They're flying off the counter out of his hands. He's grabbing them to try to catch them. And I don't know about this. Knox says that it's charming, and I mean, she's trying to very, very positive about this whole thing about, just a couple of issues, but everything's fine here. Mariner's not convinced at any of that stuff.
Nope. And Tendi even asked one of the vendors who's selling uniforms. She says, "Oh, cool retro uniform. Where do you get them?" "We get them off or where did you replicate it?" "Not replicated. We get them off the dead crewman."
Yeah.
It's like an old TOS blue shirt with a hole in it.
Well, they had a bunch of those, and then they had on either side of the entryway there were Star Trek II uniforms, a regular Monster Maroon, and then the away team's jacket kind of one. And then in the back, when you get a close up of Tendi, I believe it's the name Ted Cassidy's character on TOS when he was he was working with Dr. Corby. I can't remember his character name, but I believe
yeah.
I believe his uniform is behind Tendi.
Rock.
And then and then there's a whole rack of uniforms.
You must have freeze framed a lot in this show.
Oh yeah, well, if you're watching the video of it, we can see cycling through a bunch of images from the episode. So yeah, I was looking at some of the stuff very closely to see what was going on.
Yes. And I love Tendy's response, how did you make them without replicators? They're uniforms of long dead men. Vintage. It doesn't even face. It just walks on, and we get another scene with suspicious food. Don't eat that; it's cursed.
Yeah, there was some really weird, like a taco stand type of thing going on there. So we get to the records room because that's where Rutherford is going to find out. Okay, he's going to go through the schematics and see if he can figure out, okay, how do I fix this issue you're having with the plating? But he starts to turn.
Yes.
At that point.
And then Boimler makes a he tries calling an ensign on the Cerritos.
Well, he's calling. So they must be. I don't know if they're on the ship or whether they're on the station, but it's the same two people that in the previous episode, or one of the two previous episodes, that he was being the kind of the mentor for, giving the.
Oh, right. The pep talk. Yeah.
So he's calling for those two, and they had already turned into these creatures, these cursed people, as Mariner was claiming. It's the curse. It's the curse of Starbase 80.
At which point, she and Knox get into a fight, arguing over this, and you find out. Mariner says, "How do you know to fight so well?" I'm El-Aurian. You mean like Guinan? You're 400 years old? No, I'm only 30, but I pay attention.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful dialogue. Well, they're trying to kill each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Knox says, you're not paying attention. It's the comm badges. Well, Boimler's fine. Everything's okay with him, but he's not. They turn around and he's gone all zombie on him.
So we've lost Tendi, we've lost Boimler, we've lost Rutherford. Yeah, and we also get introduced to the ship's doctor, Dr. Harrison Horseberry.
And I know you probably did. What was the name of the virus? That wasn't that noticeable?
Well, it was a Tarkane parasite.
That's it.
Yeah.
And where have we seen that before? I
believe that is Geordi was infected by that, and he had that kind of all just glowy type, almost like a black light effect going on. I'm pretty sure that's what that one is.
I was having way too many flashbacks of everything from the Suliban. I don't know. No, it's not Suliban. I had too many things going through my head. I don't even know where to start looking for this, aside from Googling it. I'm not going to do that. Mess up my search results for decades.
Yeah. I'm going to see if I see. This is live, folks.
So Knox convinces, while in a full Nelson headlock hold, convinces Mariner, yes, it is the comm badges, and they need to figure out what's going on with that.
Right. And they have to, but they also then realize that, if it's not the ship, if it's not the station, then this is coming from the ship. And if we go back to the ship, then it's going to be full of
zombie people too.
Yeah, these people. So
what choice do we have?
Yeah, exactly. They have to go, but Knox says, I'm going to bring two of my best weirdos with me.
Yeah, that's what it was. I had that one written down too. Like, how are we going to get past that? With the help of two of my biggest weirdos. And you're left wondering, okay, we got to wait for the scene to cut and divulge itself.
And we find out Dr. Horseberry and Chad.
So they encounter this overwhelming pile of zombies in the corridor. We can't get past that. And then Chad takes over. He says, watch this. And he whips out his corn dogs. And
did you know how he took out the corn dogs? He went full on Wolverine.
That's what it was. He was kind of spinning them around, and then they popped out in his fingers.
Right. He basically put up his hands like that, and 3 pointed spikes came out with corn dogs on them.
Wolverine corn dog.
But before that, they when they're trying to get on board, they can't get past a door that keeps opening and closing.
Oh, right. It's just going.
And that's because Livik is doing stuff there.
About Livik. To which point Knox picks up this tray and jams it in the door so it can't close. Goes, that was quick thinking. That happens all the time on the station.
So they make their way to the bridge, which is important because when they first get back on board the Cerritos, the self-destruct alert is going on and off and on
Right.
and off.
Like, let's go here. We got to get to the bridge. So they get to the bridge and we find, was it Billups that was actually dragging his head across the panel?
He had been doing that when they came on board. Now he was sitting in the captain's chair, and he was just like,
just shoves him right out. Like,
oh, she doesn't shove him. She punches him straight in the face to knock him off that chair.
No, she loved that. Like, looking for an excuse to punch Billups.
But they get that to stop at least.
Yep.
But they still haven't figured out, well, where is it coming from? And now they had found out originally they'd taken Jet's comm badge and had kind of ascertained part of this, but now on the ship they could isolate it to cetacean ops.
Ooh, dun 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 dun.
It's all about the whales. This is the one with the whales. See, that's what this.
They get to cetacean ops, and I don't know which one of the two, but one of them has
Matt.
eyes and was it Matt?
Yeah.
Glowy eyes and electrical charges coming out of its mouth, climbs out of the tank and starts going up to one of the panels, kind of like a Borg, and just zaps it. And Knox says, "What is he doing?" I don't know. That's new.
But they figure out that must be some alien that's like trying to use that to investigate the ship, and that's what's happened. It's possessed all these people, and it's using them all as its eyes and ears and hands
and tongue.
And Mariner points out, and tongue. So yeah,
because they're licking the walls. So Mariner tries to stop the whale, Matt, or the alien, I should say. She gets wrapped up in one of these electrical charges. Then Knox tries to free her, and they're both in trouble. So they're turning into zombies. She says, I feel the moron. I'm feeling less intelligent, or whatever it was. She said that she was being drained of her intelligence. And finally, Dr. Horseberry walks up, grabs one of the pool skimmer nets, and whacks Matt across the head, and the alien pops out. That was awesome. How'd you do that? Complicated doctor stuff. Yeah.
Well, otherwise known as percussive maintenance or percussive doctoring, I suppose, in this case.
And then they capture the electrical alien charged entity in a bucket.
Yeah, but then they put him in something much better, which kind of reminds me of putting him into a microwave, which I thought that's not right either. That can't.
And once the alien is ejected from Matt, everybody else kind of wakes up, including Boimler, who's licking a wall.
Yeah,
at that moment. And we should probably pause that till we get to the end.
Well, we can take a little bit further with that. We can just reveal that it's Clem is the alien, right? So his name is Clem.
His name is Clem. Yep.
We've had a Chad and a Clem in this episode. I don't know. I think they were kind of like low on names this week. I don't know.
We'll make up for that in next week with episode 6. I made notes of the names. They're brilliant.
All right. So meanwhile, we have a whole thing going with Freeman and Ransom is there because they're trying to get the piece that they need for the nav to fix the navigation
processor. Yeah.
And so they go into ops, and ops, when the doors open into ops, and there's a red alert sign on that as well.
Klaxons are going off.
And it's a red rectangle klaxon going off. They open up the doors. You just see it for a split second. It's clearly the Enterprise bridge or just a variation thereof. And there's somebody like, is this person dead at the console?
Yeah, they're keeled over on the console. There's drool and everything. They go to check if he's alive, and he wakes up. What's with the klaxons? Oh, we can't get him fixed. You can barely hear yourself think, but he says you get used to them. So Freeman walks over to the panel, does a few things, and they shut off. Hey, thanks. That was awful helpful. He says, we're looking for the chief engineer. Oh, that would be Lieutenant Jakubowski. He's up on deck 33.
I'll draw you a map. Here's a map for it, which he draws on a napkin, which is like a rudimentary drawing a 4-year-old would go, oh my, I could do one better than that.
It just came from deck 33, and Ransom says, hey, let's follow the map. And the napkin is sticking to his hand because he's still covered with jello.
So they get on a turbo lift, which has
handle controls.
and Ransom makes the mistake of saying, "Do you ever use these?
Were these in use?" He says, twist handle control. Did you use these when you were an ensign?
I'm not that old." Never say that to your captain.
So they say Jakubowski says he's in the arcade. So they tell the turbo lift arcade, and she says, "Where does she send him? Maintenance?"
Yeah, it's the labyrinth of the maintenance level.
So she takes them, and they say, "No, we need to go to the arcade." And the turbo lift basically confirms it and takes them there. As they step out, the turbo lift says, "Arcade," closes the door and goes.
And they find Gene again, and he's got his head stuck in a tube because he's trying to get rid of these bats on the station.
That's his latest test. How he got there so fast, we're left to wonder.
He didn't take the turbo lift, clearly. That's how he got there so fast.
So he pulls it out, and he says, there's a leak. I can't fix it. So Freeman fixes that too. They're just about to. Oh, I'm sorry. The give up part is when they actually get to the arcade.
Right. So they say, "Well, we're just fixing things. Can we please find the chief engineer?" Oh yeah, in the arcade, and
in the arcade
takes him to a set of stairs.
Yeah, and Ransom's all excited. Ooh, glute workout. Oh, stairs. Boom. You don't see that in space very often. The perfect workout.
So they walk up 30 flights of stairs, and Ransom hasn't even broken a sweat. Freeman would rather not be doing this.
And when they get there, there's a whole bunch of Akamarians, which we learned earlier that the Akamarians are basically in control of the station.
Well, they own half the station because there was a little wonkiness that happened with the treaty. And Knox says, I'm sure that renegotiating the treaty is probably really low on the diplomatic list. So,
says, so the station's basically controlled by a knife gang.
Yeah.
And we encounter some of them just outside the arcade. He says, well, there's an awful lot of growling and glowering going on around here.
Unless you're headed to the arcade. Yes, we are. Oh, enjoy yourself. Here's a bucket of coins.
They sure are nice. Free tokens to the arcade. When we enter the arcade, okay, Mr. Trivia, did you notice a lot of the arcade names, the game names?
I did. I didn't write them down. Unfortunately, I know we had the captain's chair.
We had Ferengi's Fortune.
And he's playing
Chaos. And he's playing something Romulan, but we never got a name off of it.
Right. And to me, I meant to look it up and I didn't get a chance to. The Romulan bird of prey that's on the side of it, the whooshes somehow invoke to me the Last Starfighter. Those little whooshes that are below it and above it. I'd have to look at that again to be sure, but I wouldn't put it past them.
The animators were clearly inspired. I wouldn't be surprised if some fans actually come up with these games. Hey, I released Ferengi's Fortune to the internet. Good luck trying to win.
I hope you didn't release it for free because that's totally anti-Ferengi.
Violates one of the rules of acquisition.
But it turns out that Gene, who's in the arcade, actually is Lieutenant Gene Jakubowski. And he's making him do this running around because he can't fix all this stuff and he's sorry about it.
And we don't understand if it's lack of skill, lack of tools. He just says, I can't. Wow, you are not the most resourceful engineer.
And he's the chief engineer. It's worrying.
So Ransom says, that's it. Let's get out of here. But Freeman relinquishes it, goes, let's take care of this and because she's got a chip on her shoulder because the alt universe Freeman was, she couldn't take it in there. She said, I'm not going to let that be my fate as well.
Right. And which is odd. One thing that's weird about all this with Freeman is I believe what is disclosed to her is that, the other dimensions, Freeman was sent to Starbase 80. Didn't say she was in charge of Starbase 80.
That's true.
She was reassigned or sent there. She might have been pulling a Mariner, and it was demotion to go there. Don't we don't think we really knew that she was in charge of it, but
like a penal colony.
we'll give that one to Carol. So along that same line, because they're going to help try to they're going to help Jean get rid of all these bats that are on the station.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the rest of the Cerritos crew is helping with a lot of repairs on Starbase 80.
They fix the grav plating in the reactor room.
Right. So they're doing a little bit there kind of to make up for things and, the bad reputation that it has. And, they see Starbase 80 in a different light now. And to me, that's kind of this running theme we've had going.
It's a place for second chances. I think at one point they said, I like to think of Starbase 80 as a place for second chances. And when they get the grav plating, everybody, lands on their feet on the proper floor. But then like a half a second later, a console.
One of the consoles, yes.
Whomp! And the guy in the background is just looking at it like, well, that's unusual.
Meanwhile, the person in the front is giving a thumbs up. So I don't know what that means.
It's so interesting when you look at what the other characters are doing on screen when something like that happens. There's another one in the next episode that I'll point out as well.
They then wonder where the captain is, and it turns out that Captain Freeman is determined to get these bats off the station because Starbase 80 broke that other Freeman. Not gonna break me.
Yeah. And the scene ends from the distant outside of the station, and you hear Ransom say, "What they encounter the big one." And she's making a charge for it. She said, "Watch out for the claws." Oh, no, not the claws.
It won't even fit into the net. Oh, my goodness. All right. So that is Starbase 80.
We did find out that Chad survived the onslaught.
Yes.
And that's where he says, Chad lives to dog another day.
Mm-hmm. All right. You told me, rumor has it, that you've got a couple of suggestions on what to rate this episode on.
Yes. We are going to be rating this either on corn dogs, navigational processors, or comm badges.
I think corn dogs is probably most appropriate.
That was my first choice too. So we'll rate this on corn dogs a la Chad.
All right. I'll let you start, sir, since you came up with the rating system.
I am giving this a solid 8. I love things like the Con Lake music, the arcade gag, the retro turbo lift, and of course the gel. The whole scene about gelling up. There were some really fun points in here, and Star Trek fans are just going to love this one, as many other Lower Decks episodes. The things I didn't like is that both storylines, both Ransom and Freeman, and then the Lower Deckers with Knox, they just seem to go on a little too long. And I felt like this was stretched a bit. So that's where I came up with the 8.
Okay. Before we go any further, just a quick note. We got a message from Diane.
Sins of the Father, season 3, episode 17. Indeed, try the dead. Yes, happy Thanksgiving. Very timely. Very timely. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think for pretty much the same reasons. One of the things I was saying is that I feel like we're on this kind of redemption arc or wrapping things up, which is weird because they didn't know going into the season that this was going to be the last season. They might have suspected or, were concerned, but we've had Jennifer's situation taken care of. We've had the Klingon captain situation taken care of. We've kind of given a rethinking about Starbase 80 in this. And so it's kind of weird to be doing all that at the same time. And I part of me felt like I wanted Starbase 80 to remain horrible. Now if you make a joke about Starbase 80, it's well, they can't help it. They're doing their best. It's a plucky ship. It's a place for second chances. And, where's our Starbase 80 now? Have to be Starbase 81, I guess, at that point.
That's what I was thinking. We got to pick another number. Starbase 47.
All right. Well, it's time now to ask a certain Charlie, and I don't know which Charlie it is because it's always random. We never know which Charlie we're going to get. Charlie, is it okay to do subspace chatter?
Now we get to spin the wheel of Charlie, right?
Yes.
All right.
Sure thing, friend. I love subspace chatter.
Yay!
We get happy. Hi, Charlie.
All right.
All
I
right.
believe you have the
Writer,
first story.
producer, director Simon Kinberg, already attached to Paramount's next Star Trek feature film, has been tapped by Disney/Lucasfilm to write and produce a new Star Wars trilogy of movies. Whoa, okay. However, the quote, untitled Star Trek or origin movie, unquote, is still moving forward with Toby Haynes and director Seth Grahame-Smith as screenwriter and Kinberg as producer. According to the Puck newsletter, Kinberg's Star Wars obligations will need to wait for the Star Trek project. And according to sources, the script is done and is on its way towards a green light, probably by the end of this year. That could mean filming could begin in the first half of 2025. Oh, sweet.
So it's on, as I recall, they put it on their list for their 2025-2026 season when they announced this earlier this year, without a definition of when that season begins and ends. So you've got a lot of leeway there. But certainly there is some push to get this out in 2026 because that is the 60th anniversary of Star Trek. So you kind of want to have a big deal going on.
Yeah.
It's a bit sad though to realize that the last Star Trek movie was Star Trek Beyond, which came out for the 50th anniversary of Star Trek.
Oh, you're making me feel older by the minute.
So it'll be 10 years if they get this out the door in 2026. So obviously no word yet on plot, no word yet on casting. We do know that it's supposed to be Origins of the Federation, and we wonder what that means because we kind of saw a bit of that at the end of Enterprise. So
yeah,
what is this going to be exactly? Don't know. And is it going to stick to at least somewhat to canon, or are we going to be, let's throw that all the way again?
I hope they stick to canon.
I hope so too. Now, the other thing that happened very recently is that I think it was on Sunday, this thing came out in celebration of the 30th anniversary of Generations. And
yes,
it was 765874 Unification.
Jenny, who should I? Never mind.
No. This is the third one of these films, and the first part of this one has tie-ins to the first two that we'd seen previously to this. Also, that number 765874 is J.M. Colts, and if you don't know who that is, don't worry about it. We'll get there. That's her Federation serial number.
Oh, okay.
All right, and we begin with an interesting quote. The quote from "How we deal with death is just as important as how we deal with life," which we know is from Star Trek II. Mm-hmm. That is Kirk talking to Saavik at that point, which also is kind of a significant pairing of people to be talking to there. Then the first big surprise we get is the return of Gary Mitchell in this. And in addition to that, it is Gary Lockwood who went in and did some motion capture. And of course, they, just like with other people, they overlaid a digital mask on him, but he did come in, did get scanned, and was actually the body underneath this for Gary Seven's return.
I want someone to put a digital mask over me for about 40 years ago.
Well, the trick is to walk around with it in real life that way. That's the problem. That's the thing they got to work on.
Let's make that happen.
All right. I'll get Otoy on that right away. Now, I don't know when you saw Gary Mitchell, I want to say Gary, when you saw Gary Mitchell show up, what did you think? Did you think, okay, he's dead, how is he here? Or did you think kind of what I thought, okay, he got crushed by a rock, but maybe that's not enough to kill whatever he had become.
I thought he was just trapped in the hole. I thought there might be enough space under the rock.
Yeah.
But, no, I wasn't sure what to make of it at first. And then we started seeing more characters going, this has based on the opening quote, how we deal with death is at least as important as how we deal with life. No, other way around. That sort of set the stage for me. Like, we're looking at a bunch of dead people. So we're on some spiritual journey quest afterlife thing that I was waiting for it to unwrap.
Okay. Well, here's my take on it. Taking a different approach on it after watching it. The events we're going to see happen afterwards. Some of them are really hard to bring together, but here's my supposition: is that Gary Mitchell, again, didn't die. That, same thing as there was room for him under there. He just couldn't. He was knocked out. Blah blah. Whatever the reason is. I'm not dead yet. So the things we're going to see happening later in this, he isn't just like willing in his mind to kind of have a vision of it. As we know, Gary Mitchell could make things appear. They were real when he decided to do it.
Right.
And that this is his part in this play, if you will, of getting the pieces together to make what happens at the end of this happen, which is why we see him first saying, okay, I'm now going to, make all these things happen. And I've got a reason why some of that also made me think of a reason why some other things happen in here. But that's my supposition, is that he's alive and he's making these things happen. Then we have, again, something we saw previously, and we have the Viridian 3, which is where Spock traveled after Kirk died and Picard had buried him. And we saw him picking up his badge at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it appears now probably what happened is he also retrieved the body, which is how the body ended up at the Daystrom Institute. Okay.
Good point. Yep.
Okay.
Spoiler alert if you haven't watched Picard. Sorry.
Yeah. More things from previous ones. We have a city which it looks so familiar, and I'm trying to place where that look came from. There's so many future cities. I'm just drawing a blank. We have now, this is Spock doing a mind meld on a person who we'll talk about in a minute. And we have this bizarre monolith type mountain thing, which is square shaped, and the top of it, there's an opening which kind of looks like V'ger, the interior of V'ger. Somebody else pointed out it also looks like an awful lot like the CBS eye, because it's got a big circle around where that opening is.
Yeah, it's kind of got, it's in a desert landscape. It feels very like Masada-esque.
Now, this is where we see, this is Yeoman J.M. Colt. So this is who that serial number is referencing. And she's appeared in all three of these. Now, obviously, it's no longer the original actress who was Laurel Goodwin, who we see on the bottom on the right-hand side there. It's now played by, and I'm going to probably mispronounce the name, Mahi Theza now does the role. And I've been looking at the footage that they do, and I don't think they map her face. I think they just use her face, that it's close enough. Now, I could be wrong about that. It could be that her face is so close that what they do map doesn't really change it all that much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about that.
Well, those two women definitely have a different profile.
Yes. Then we go to, again, we saw this in, I believe it was the second one that Otoy put out, which is the crashed saucer section of Enterprise D. And it's going to be lifted off of the planet. So we're kind of moving around in all this stuff that has previously happened. Previously on 765-874.
Yeah.
We have these things happen. Then we have a shot, and I think this shot is new. I could be wrong about that. I think the shot is new. This is a shot of Spock in a motion picture uniform doing a mind meld with Colt in a motion picture uniform. But she's not looking older, and he is looking older.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. I also found that they had tried other test footage with it. They had, I'm showing two on the screen here. The top one is pretty much what we see in the finished piece, just in red light rather than normal light. Interesting, the image that they have secondary is the two actors again with the digital mask on them, but they're dressed in the motion picture uniforms, and Colt has a different hairstyle, which I'm wondering if they were toying with. Well, she wouldn't necessarily wear her hair the same all the time, but they decided against that and said, no, we need that as a through line to make this person recognizable. Also, that image is very reminiscent of that classic Spock and Kirk image of the, from the original series, like at the TV Guide cover where they're both looking up at the camera from that angle.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
As well. Then we have, now this one is interesting again, because we got two things going on here. We have Colt looking at some screens, and the screens are the screens that we saw in Star Trek Picard when they go to the Daystrom Institute, and there is Kirk's body. It's the exact same stuff. The same graphics designer did them for this piece as well. And let's add another layer on top of this. Colt is now in a Kelvin universe uniform.
We are all over the place on this one.
So this is where you get kind of that idea that there's jumping going on here, not just in time, but also between universes when we get that going on, which is going to be important. And then we have a very extreme zoom in on Kirk's skull.
This is where I realize I think I watched the wrong video. I did the wrong homework. I watched the one where Kirk is sort of walking through these scenes.
Oh,
and
that's coming up.
Spock at the end.
That's coming up.
How did I miss so many scenes with Colt in them?
Well, keep in mind these are flashes. Sometimes they're longer, but sometimes it's like 3 frames.
I didn't pick up on that subliminal advertising thing.
Then we find ourselves immediately transported to a place. Now, we don't know where this place is supposed to be. I do know that it actually is Huntington Botanical Gardens in San Mateo, California.
It's SETI Alpha 5 before the accident.
And we're going to see statues. Now, the statue we see when it first opens up, when we pan down, I think that's a digital statue, because I could not find a statue like that inside. And there's a lot of statues, believe me, inside the Huntington Botanical Gardens. And we'll get to that in a second as well.
You do a virtual walk around looking for statues?
I went online, did lots of research here.
Okay, apparently so.
We see this fountain, and this fountain is within the park. This is actually labeled as the Baroque Fountain. I think this is really a case of we're trying to set a very calm atmosphere. We have this figure kind of walking and examining the flowers. We have these fountains. That's
the main vibe I got is, things are at peace in this whole montage.
And now we're panning up and we get to see the back, whoever it is walking, and clearly it's Kirk at this point. I mean, we're pretty much sure about that. We get another statue in here. This one is a statue of Juno. I don't think there's any significance to the particular statues that they used.
They're just nice statues.
Yeah, just identifying that one there. This other one here is actually even at the Huntington Botanical Gardens.
Is that Athena?
They don't know. This one it's a virtue. There were several statues that are virtues, but they can't always identify which one these particular ones are supposed to be. All right. And then Kirk appears. And we
Mhm.
see naturally he's in his generation's uniform without his badge because he would no longer have his badge.
'Cause Spock took it.
Well, because Picard took it off,
Yeah, Picard took it. That's right.
right? And put it on top of the grave.
He wanted a souvenir.
Yes. But then he left it behind, which is weird. Now, Kirk, throughout this, is going to be portrayed in real life by actor Sam Witwer. And the name may sound familiar to you. It sounded familiar to me. And I said, oh, yes, it's that guy. So I've got a picture of him on screen. I remember him so clearly because he was in several episodes of Supergirl as a character.
Okay.
So I constantly, he was a bad guy in that show. But so he is doing all of
The motion.
the head motions. He's doing all of the stances. If you see him walking, striking a pose, moving his face in a certain way, tilting his head, that's all Sam's work, just overlaid
Mhm.
with what Otoy is doing. And then we get this. Now, Kirk sees this group of people, and I haven't been able to figure out who all the people are in this shot. We know
No, yeah, I was looking at that too. Do we I recognize uniforms and costumes.
now there's one person at the front, and in the credits at the end, there's a credit for Crusher. No
Really?
first name, just Crusher.
Oh, that's the wrestler who used to show up on Saturday Night
I'm
Wrestling.
the Crusher.
Right. That guy.
So
You
people are
missed it. He was in there.
well, people are assuming that the person in the white dress uniform is Crusher.
Oh.
Some people, if they go with that, they think that it's
Jack.
Wesley. Some people think that it's Jack.
The older Jack's dad, Wesley's dad.
Well, I was thinking more of Beverly's
Son?
son.
Oh, okay.
But it's unclear. And I actually put that out online to one of the people involved with the production. Didn't answer that one. I think it's being left nebulous.
Oh, Jared Cooper online also says that Sam Witwer was also the voice of Darth Maul.
Yes. So yes, he was also a voice on Lower Decks in an episode of Lower Decks.
Question: why would Jack be there?
I'm not sure because I'm not sure who all the other people are. Now, somebody has speculated that these are all people that are alive, but they may be the children or the grandchildren of people that Kirk knew.
These are all the people you sent on away missions that didn't come
Yeah,
back.
these are all the red shirts. But you get the feeling that these people are not. They're not dead. They're alive. They're here, just like we're going to see who else is here in a moment. They're actually there. Okay, so they're there for a reason. They are somebody, but I have not been able to ascertain.
Then we get some tighter shots of some of these characters.
Right. So we're looking, and Kirk is going down. He's acknowledging people. He's kind of, reckon. Now, if it's what one of the speculations is that it's the children or grandchildren of people that he knew, then he wouldn't really recognize them. They would be there, but he wouldn't recognize them. But he recognizes somebody all of a sudden and just stops.
Yeah, this woman who looks like she's got Savik's hairdo. She's got the Vulcan ears. And
I recognize Robin right away.
And behind her is another Vulcan in purple robes with the scrolly writing on it.
So who's in the credits is credited as that's Mark Sinery being Sorak. Sorak. Now this is not canon on screen because they cut the lines which were actually written. Meet Saavik and Spock's son, Sorak.
Saavik and Spock's son. Interesting.
From Ponfar on the Genesis planet. So that is why when Kirk is looking at Saavik and then she turns around and brings the other person forward, and I've got to go to this next one to say the fact that they put so many expressions into tiny expressions
yes
into this thing, because he looks at Sorak, and there's a moment of recognition, and then he looks back at Savik, who nods.
Mm-hmm.
But then
Did they name Sorak in this particular production, or did they have a name for
Sorak is in the credit? Well, so there's a list. There's a credit for Sorak at the end of it, and that's how I know who the actor was in it. Apparently, Sorak is in one of the books, but the age would be different. So it's not necessarily the same.
Do you think there's a Vulcan named Spork, and everybody giggles when they say his name?
Yeah. Well,
that sounds like a Lower Decks thing to do, right?
Only the people that, anyway. All right. So then Savik says, you need to move on to this person up ahead. And we end up with Yor. And Yor is from Star Trek Discovery. And this is important because Yor is a time soldier. I have an inset in here that shows Kovich and Dr. Culber looking at a holographic representation, but Kovich talks about how he came in due to an intrusion, the result of a separate timeline from an intrusion by a Romulan mining ship. Right. So he is from the Kelvin timeline, but right now,
is he Romulan or is he a Reman?
I don't think he's either. I don't think he's a species that we've seen before, because that right below his head, there's this what looks like a collar is part of him.
Right. Oh, so that doesn't equate to either species. Okay.
Right. So he has crossed over between these two universes, and right now, as we know from Discovery, he's in this universe. Okay. So everybody we've seen up to this point is in this universe. Gary Mitchell is in this universe, Savik and Sorak and Crusher, whichever Crusher that is, all this, everybody's in this universe, including Kirk is in this universe. Now, my supposition is Gary Mitchell can't get somebody to a different universe. So they are going to use Yor to do this instead. He is going to be the one who gets Kirk there, which is why he's here, to be that connection between the two places. Oh. And when he presents Kirk's badge to Kirk, he doesn't let go of it right away.
Right. He's holding onto it with both hands. I noticed this as well. And Kirk just grabs it with his right hand, and Yor won't let it go until Kirk grabs it with both hands. This is very reminiscent of how you present your business card to, or Japanese person would present their business card to you. It's respectful to take it with both hands. That's what I picked up on that one.
Well, what I picked up on it is there's a bunch of emotions I could assign to Yor at this point. One of them is take this seriously.
Oh yeah. Are you sure about this? Mm-hmm.
The other one is, why are you able to go back and I can't? Like resentment that he's going to be doing this thing that Yor can't do. So I'm not sure what to, it's very obvious that he's reluctant to give up that badge right away. And there's got to be a reason for that, because as soon as
interesting. I hadn't read into it that way. I was like, hey, do it right or don't do it. Don't you don't get your badge.
Yeah. I mean, I think any way you look at it, because he's just staring at Kirk, just emotionless, just staring at him.
Yep.
And as soon as Kirk takes the badge, he is then, the background elongates. I thought this was the background it fades back. The people in the background fade back, and it elongates, and that becomes a corridor that Kirk is in. So it's kind of like this netherworld where there's a shadow of his universe, like on the walls on either side of him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's in this middle ground someplace, and he's looking ahead, and he sees a light up ahead of him.
Going to the light, Carol Ann.
Exactly. Let's see. So then he looks down just as he's about to walk forward, and he sees his reflection in the water that's on the floor.
But it's a much younger self wearing his gold tunic.
Right. It's TOS Kirk looking back at him. Then, and I don't know if you picked up on this. I think I've got something else in this slide. First of all, Kirk's stance is very much like almost exactly like that standee you used to be able to, buy of Kirk.
It's an action figure at this point.
Yeah, angled exactly the right way.
Yep.
But if you look at young Kirk's reflection, it's
Oh, right.
old Kirk.
Old Kirk.
It's like they're standing on opposite sides of this, like it's
Curtain
about to
call. Yeah.
flip, right?
Yep.
Because now you've gone from this side of that walkway underneath it, and everything else happens underneath that walkway. We've gone to the other side, if you will.
Oh, just
that
like
point.
Stranger Things.
Indeed. It's the upside down. And again, great work on both Sam's part and the team at Otoy. The expressions, the look of the character. But as young Kirk is about to go, he runs into Wrath of Khan.
Jared says, this is the Shatner verse from the novels. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. I think he's in the Nexus.
Nexus. Oh, Nexus. All right. We now a third iteration of Kirk we've got here.
Wrath of Khan uniform.
And
Kirk.
they actually, maybe because they didn't want to keep doing this back and forth, or there was a particular reason they chose these ones. But when I was showing you those pictures of Spock and Colt in the motion picture
Yes.
uniforms, there's another shot with Spock and Kirk with the appropriate hair, the appropriate outfit as well. So they had a model. They could have done that as well, but they chose these three in particular to do. And then Kirk is now looking. Kirk comes in, but now he's walking in again from the underside, the other side of all this. And he sees these essentially shadows, these echoes of himself, of his previous life. And they just fade away.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes walking in. As he's walking, I want to point out that the little details sometimes are the big things, right?
Yep.
On one of these images here, I have his badge as it was left at the end of Generations. And there's a tiny chip near the top of the point, on the circle near the top of the point, and another one.
Gosh. Yeah.
It's exactly the same on his uniform here.
They went nuts on the detail.
Mm-hmm. And we get our only piece of dialogue, if you will. I guess it's a monologue, since there's only one piece of dialogue. And it's the quote about at the end of Star Trek II, there are always possibilities, Spock said. And if Genesis is indeed life from death, I must return to this place again. So we're talking about Spock. We're talking about rebirth. We're talking about something going on here.
Mm-hmm.
He walks through. Now, somebody online had some citing where some of this furniture came from. Like, oh, this is from when Spock such and such. And so this room, which is mostly empty, has a couple of pieces of furniture and a table and some knickknacks, which we'll get to in a second. So I didn't write all those things down, but I believe everything you see in this big room definitely has a connection to Spock. The room reminded me an awful lot, for some reason, of Tron Legacy,
mm-hmm.
where Flynn lived. That kind of that low.
I was picking up a Star Wars vibe.
Oh, okay, all right. Then we see the Spock's Idic on a table. We also see the photo casing that we saw in Star Trek Beyond, when Zachary Quinto Spock opens it up, and it's an illuminated picture of the original cast in the Monster Maroons.
And a glass of vodka.
And a glass of vodka. And then we see Spock. And Spock is portrayed by the same person who's been portraying him this entire time, Lawrence Selleck. And I have a picture of him up. You can see somewhat similar facial features.
And the
to,
ears.
Nimoy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought this was a great moment that you have Spock lying on this bed and you have Kirk sit down beside him and they hold hands. And then Kirk does that, putting his hand on top of their hands held together,
Yep.
which is exactly what they did in Star
the
Trek,
motion
the motion picture.
Yep.
Then they add to that because then in this case, Spock puts his hand on top of all of that when he realizes, oh, I'm not hallucinating. You are here.
Mhm.
So I thought that was an interesting addition onto it. And then essentially they sit and they watch sunset. And that is the end. As Spock is obviously dying at this point.
You picked out a lot more detail in that than I did, especially the first half.
So that's what I got out of it. I rest my case.
A full-length movie. It's a heck of a trailer.
Yeah, really. If you put all three of them together, it's a little bit longer. It runs about, what is it?
10 minutes?
Well, 10 minutes. There's about 3 minutes worth of credits. I think it's about 5 minutes long. 5 minutes long on it. All right. Well, with that said, we don't have time for any other news stories. We don't have time to go to Vulcan, Alberta, Canada, none of that stuff. So I'm going to take this opportunity to say, I hate to do it in this case because, he's such a nice guy, but we got to say goodbye to Charlie.
Thanks for having me along. It was fun. But now my Phasian step-parents are calling, so I gotta go! Go!
Never gets old.
No. And neither does Charlie, by the way.
Good point.
All right. So now we're going to head out on our second main mission with an appropriate sound effect.
Well, let's warp on out.
Woo. All right. And let's see, I will handle the particulars on this one, I guess. Let me scroll myself down here. This is Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 5, Episode 6. That's right. We're in the back half of the last season of Gods and Angles, written by Aaron Burdett and directed by Brandon Williams.
And yes, when I was writing this down ahead of time, I had this queued up for the rest of the season, what the titles were. Like, Gods and Angles? Did I spell that right? Double check it.
It's not angels, right? No, it's angles. And we kind of find out why.
Yeah, your brain immediately goes, what are they doing with that?
All right. So we have this interesting thing going on in this episode. We have a peace negotiations going on between two sets of beings who are just essentially energy.
Photonic species. Yeah.
One are cubes, squares, and one are round orbs. So they don't like each other. Apparently they came together because their two nebulas collided about 100 years ago, and they've been fighting ever since. So apparently there's a nebula that produces things that are just basic shapes. There's a cone nebula out there someplace, I'm sure.
I think we ought to finish up the geometry on this thing.
It depends on how far you want to go with that, I suppose. But yeah, all your primary shapes, your basic.
You dodecahedrons can't make up your mind whether you want to be a sphere or a cube.
We had enough of dodecahedrons. Thank you very much. All right. So the other thing that's happening in here, well, we got two other things happening. So we've got these negotiations, very delicate because they clearly do not care for each other. But we have a new ensign on board, Ensign Ollie. And Ensign Ollie is interesting because Ensign Ollie is a demigod.
Now, did they? I thought I heard it the first time, but I couldn't find it the second time. Did they say what her first name was?
No, it's
Okay.
I believe the pad just says Ensign Ollie.
That's what I saw. I thought it was. I was looking and looking. Did I miss it?
Well, she's the granddaughter of a person with only one name.
Right. Prince.
Yes, because she is the granddaughter of Zeus from the gods. And Mariner points out, well, I thought Kirk kicked their butt before we ran into him, and they just went
They
with the wind.
went with the wind. And Freeman has a great line, says, "If she so much as sneezes on an orbit of cube, she'll be one with the wind, just like her pawpaw."
I want to point out something we will definitely be getting to. This season, it's all about Boimler growing the beard. Yeah,
Absolutely. Well,
Jared is correct.
Ensign Ollie, when we start out, Ensign Ollie and Ransom she's loading up some cargo sled with different shapes.
100
including-
pieces of furniture. Who says you can't put 100 pieces of furniture on the sled? And Ransom says, I did, and it was an order. Like, don't do that.
And she's got Worf's chair in there with
There's a Dabo table in there as well.
double wheel in there. Yeah, it's like, there's some interesting stuff. That one I had to freeze and go, what am I missing here? And she taps on it or something, and it gets shocked and collapses.
Yeah.
So things are not going her way. Freeman says, we got to get her off this ship. She's already been ejected from 6 other ships. This was her final chance. And Mariner grabs Captain Freeman's pad and goes, who is this cool person I haven't heard about? And says, I kind of basically want to mentor her and give her a chance. Well, if she shows up with another cargo sled in the hallway, and it's just,
she's got a she meets Mariner in the lower decks, something we haven't seen in a while, because Mariner is waiting for, apparently Ollie has Mariner's old bunk, and she's waiting for her there, and all the same lower deckers are still down there, including Towel Guy.
And you hear Ollie coming up, out of my way, blue guy. That's same for you, guy looking guy.
What reminded, because she had basically she was levitating things with like a tractor beam type
handheld. Yeah, it was like the size of a phaser, but it levitated things.
What it reminded me of is what Wesley had made.
Yes,
that's what it reminded me of. But hers, completely fails. It just blows out. And she's just all upset about it. And T'Lyn is just looking at her like, why is she still on board after, this incident and that incident and the other incident, she doesn't understand what's going on here with this idea of, giving her a second chance. But, Mara's all in on it. They're going to babysit somebody, one of the delegates.
Rondus.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. Hold on.
A Quadrilon.
Quadrilon was like the son of the head cube.
Yes. Will they go to
Saxonius? That was his name. Yeah, Sexagus. That's what it was. The names of this are great.
I know, it's so confusing.
They get to his quarters, the doors won't open. So Mariner overrides the security, walks in, and the place is trashed. I said, what happened here? And there's sort of this gooey image on the wall of a cube, as if you were to flatten it against the wall, and said, wow, something went down here.
All these men say murder. It was somebody was murdered. They're dead.
Mariner says, you don't have to be Dixon Hill to see that some bad bleep went down here. Yeah. Like, nice Dixon Hill reference again. So they call in the security team. Yeah. So Shax shows up, and
Mariner realizes that the view screen is missing from the computer in these quarters, and apparently Quadrilon had been spending a lot of time on the video machine because what is it? Freeman says they find corporeal
entertainment
really boring. Yeah.
And I'm drawing a blank on the character name, but he in the doorway says Rajik when he fell in the chasm.
Oh yes.
And not a good sign.
Yeah. But Ollie convinces everybody, well, we can go do some investigating for you. No problem. Because we can go below the radar, because nobody recognizes us. Mariner's always constantly, well, I'm kind of a big deal, but sure, we can do that.
I guess we'll go along with that.
Just pointing out that I'm a somebody, I'm just saying. And they do some investigating and immediately cause trouble as they walk in on one of the orbs that is not glowing.
That was
And-
Rondus.
And yeah, Rondus was very embarrassed because it's, oh, that's like the equivalent of being naked. Yes, yes, it is. Puts on a towel.
And then she says, you look great. Somebody didn't skip Radius Day.
But they're looking for
The computer.
computer in here, the screen, and Ollie finds something else instead. She finds this anti cube rhetoric.
It was sort of a circular pad, if you will.
Well, of course it would be. They're
Very flat.
spheres.
And yeah, it had some rhetoric on it. So they then interrogate. Well, Ollie goes immediately into bad cop mode.
No, she goes into insane cop mode. She goes, yeah.
and Rondus is denying the whole thing. This is Redorbulous. Which we may have to. I was considering that as a title for this episode.
Yeah, I was going through the lightning speed going, I don't have time to remember what that reference was for. I better do something else. So.
And Mariner is saying, well, yeah, how about those cubes? They're kind of weird, aren't they?
Yeah, doing a nice good cop, and then bad cop comes in again and just messes it all up.
So they turn their back on him. He takes off, and they chase him into. Where did he go?
They chase him into the conference room, where they open up the door. They go inside, and he starts blabbing that they're accusing him of murder. Murder? Who killed?
Right, because the delegates of both the orbs and the cubes are on both sides of the table. And this is when they find out. And Ollie says, well, great. Now that everybody knows, we can speak openly and freely. And Mariner just gives her the evil side glance like, no, that's not how it was supposed to go down.
And war breaks out.
That's
they
have energy beams
shape
that we didn't know about.
Yeah, and they start really taking to town on the Cerritos. I mean, they're running through the halls, blowing holes in walls, just bouncing around all over the place. It's becoming a nightmare.
So I have a question. I made observance while they were chasing Rondus through the corridors.
Yes.
We get a glimpse of a crewman in a yellow uniform wearing a turban. Have we ever seen a crewman in a turban before?
Yes, we have. Twice. At least twice. Well,
I mean, aside from Professor Quirrell.
No. Well, are you talking about the person that's got, is it a hijab that they're wearing?
No, that's what the women wear when they're fully covered and all you see is their eyes.
Well, you could see her face. The one that was seen on Lower Decks before.
This was a male character, and he had
that character. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know offhand. So I'm not sure if it's
struck me as I don't recall seeing that before. Anyway, so
because we see a lot of the characters kind of in this episode quickly passing. Like I said, we saw Towel Guy. We see Jet for a second. We see everybody just kind of in the corridors, ducking, because these things are going all over the shuttle bay. They're going through engineering. They're going racing down the corridors. So everybody gets a second to be very panicky about stuff.
Yep.
I think at that point, I think we want to tie it there for a second and talk about, because this is the thing where the story's kind of meshing a bit. So let's hop over to Boimler for a minute, because Boimler, or, trying to grow the beard of Boimler.
He kept his alt universe pad.
Yes, which apparently everybody knows he has.
Right. And of course he does. The bevel is 3.7% deeper.
It's red.
Also red. Oh yeah. And Rutherford says, so he mentions the alt universe pad, and Boimler tries to play it out like, good joke. We got a regular Ronald B. Moore over here.
And that's a callback. Wow.
That's breaking the fourth wall if there ever was one.
No, not Ronald D. Moore. Ronald B. Moore. Ronald B. Moore was Joe Piscopo as the comedian in Next Generation.
Oh my gosh. No, there is.
No, Ronald D. Moore is.
He's the writer.
Yeah. And he also did Battlestar Galactica and so forth. That's
Right.
Ronald D. Moore. This is Ronald B. Moore.
But I thought there was a real person.
There
Ronald
is, there,
D.
there
Moore.
is, there is, but that person, the
He's
the
an
stand-up
American
comedian-
visual effects producer and five-time Emmy Award winner.
the
Moore-
stand-up comedian that Joe Piscopo does.
Oh,
is named
that's
for
the
him.
reference to the comedian. Okay, got it.
Right. So they were because he talks about doing stand-up like right after he says that.
Yes, he says working on your stand-up routine. Okay, I knew he didn't say Ronald D. Moore. I rewound it and went, he didn't reference the writer, and I thought he was referencing the real person, not the comedian from Joe Piscopo. Thank you for tying that off. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for. Trivia that no one cares about. I can't remember my own name, but anyway, yeah. So he's trying to live life by Beard Boimler's pad.
Was
now
it Thomas Boimler? Is that what they called him?
I think it was wasn't he Brad? I think Thomas Boimler is Boimler's
When
transporter clone.
when the transporter accident
Right,
happened.
right.
Okay, right, to reference Thomas Riker.
Exactly. So he now has it in his head that he needs to be friends with Dr. Tiana.
Because Bearded Boimler is cool and he's successful, and Boimler is desperately trying to do that. And he said, Tiana even has a nickname for him, Flip. So he walks into the medical bay with Rutherford in tow.
Against Rutherford's.
Yeah, I don't think that's a
Better
very good
plan.
idea.
No.
It's not a good plan. Walks in and he starts dropping all these references, including some books. And Tiana says, what's with all the books? I thought I'd just flip on over here and we could flip through some chapters. and Tendy says, what's wrong with Boimler? The usual stuff.
Yeah. Boims be Boims. Well, Dr. Tiana has enough of that and get the out of here.
Right.
And he tries to flip his way out and ends up
And lands
catching
on a
some-
bunch of boxes and accidentally injecting himself with some untested anesthetic.
But he doesn't give up because he
Nope.
needs this to happen. So he now realizes, gee, the doctor swears an awful lot. I'll try that.
It communicated in her language. And
Yeah,
that went
you know,
7 ways from Sunday wrong.
dictation? No, swearing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to her in cursing. And so he lays a few words on her. What did you just say to me? And he says a few more, and she just goes at him like a crazy cat, scratching him to
Yeah, she pounces on him. He gets away. You see him go flung onto one of the bio beds, and she's clawing at him again, and he's carrying him over her
It's
head
a
like
bad time for Boimler.
so. Okay, so that catches us up because at this point we have these warring factions
In the
going
cargo bay, shuttle bay.
in the shuttle bay.
Okay.
Um,
And Mariner gets the idea, hey, we could use Ensign Ollie's crazy powers, as much as they suck, because she said, I'm not even good at electricity. She makes this lightning bolt, which sort of folds like a wet towel.
and it makes a noise like a squeaky toy.
But she says, I believe in you. You can do this. She gets in between the fighting orbs and cubes and unleashes some magnificent power. I'm doing it. I've got it. And then that starts to collapse, and there's lightning bolts that go everywhere, including one that sticks into Boimler's backside. And as he's laying there on the floor, Tiana is kneeling next to him and just kind of looking at him, not
Pondering
doing anything, just pondering, like, well, that's unusual. And that was another one where you have to look at the other characters in the scene, because that one just cracked me up. You don't see that every day.
How am I going to deal with this one?
But in retrospect, when later when she does the procedure and wants to write a paper on it, it's kind of making sense. Like, hey, I could get something out of this.
Yep. No pun intended.
Oh,
So yeah, the cubes and the orbs leave the ship, and they form these giant things. And Ransom's like, it could be anything. Who knows? They're forming this thing. Oh, it's just an orb and a cube.
Giant
That's
orb.
not even creative.
And if you have the captions on, you can find their names. The big orb was called Orbiculus, and the giant cube was Omega Cube. That's how I found most of these names. We also had Spheronius, who was the head sphere, and Sexagus, who's the head sphere.
Yeah.
Or
And-
a head cube, sorry.
And I noticed in this episode in particular, you can hear the voice actors, the regular team of actors voicing a lot of these cubes
Yes.
in this episode. So it's nice they're getting some more work because they're pulling a mini Jimmy Doohan in this case.
So even though we get to the bridge and Mariner and Ollie say, hey, I've got an idea, because Ollie has this revelation. She goes, I've been so stupid. So they run off. That's when you see Boimler and T'Ana going, what's happening here? They run to the bridge, and Freeman wants them off the bridge. She wants nothing to do with them. They made a mess of things already. And
We won't go with the analogy that they went with.
Ollie says, right, yeah, I'm going to leave that one alone. Ollie says, no, I can fix this with the tractor beam. And Shaq says, tractor beams are for tractoring.
He should know. He should know.
There's a t-shirt if there ever was one. So she says, gives out this quick technobabble explanation. They implement it, and they
drain the power
they drain their power so they can't stay in the shape of these giant orb and sphere, and get them back into the shuttle bay, where they're not glowy much and not doing much except threatening each other, prepare to be bounced upon.
Yeah, they kind of just like banging into each other.
Oh, we forgot, when they were in the boardroom right before they went to battle, we find out that one of the orbs is also missing.
Yes.
And that's when I felt the curtain came down, and I went, I know exactly what's happening here.
It turns out they're in love.
They're in love, and not only are they in love, they're together, and the photonic residue was
Yeah.
yeah. And I think even Ollie said, ew, I touched that.
Clean up after yourselves.
But they have produced a child that's sort of half cube, half orb, called, now the mother calls him Squareon, but the lead orb refers him twice as Squareon. This should be the Treaty of Squareon. Squareon, that's what it was, because it's Aaron. I went, okay, we've got another
It's what Mugatu going on here.
Orions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they record at different times with different scripts. Who knows? we've got that going. And of course, this was everybody went, oh, isn't that cute? And
Until it does what
Right.
babies do.
smile, right? I've been up here for 5 minutes. What is that? Fun ending. We have resolution on that.
But we also then go to the OR.
We go to the OR, where T'Ana is doing something very seriously. We see these chunks of lightning bolt, and we realize she's pulling pieces out of Boimler. He wakes up. Did I have a lightning bolt in my? Yeah, you sure did. And then she's
writing a paper on it.
and gives him a nickname of Bleepo.
Yeah.
He says,
And
hey,
he's excited about it.
he's excited. Rutherford is excited. He goes, I got to try this too. Let me see that alt universe pad. And now Tendi is saying, yeah, that's probably not a really good idea.
Yes, it is.
When we get to Freeman's office, we have Mariner and Ollie, first congratulating Ollie, but then reprimanding her. But you're going to spend some time in the brig because you broke a bunch of stuff. And she said, this isn't fair. So she gets sent to the brig, and Mariner says, I'm going to keep you company. You can't do that. Oh, by the way, we're totally different. I love the brig. And Mariner,
Yeah, we're so totally alike. I was hoping I looked for it and it wasn't there. I was hoping that little drawing that Mariner had, I think it was like a house.
Yes.
I don't believe it was there. So maybe somebody washed it off after all this time.
We close with Mariner just firing this barrage of questions at Ollie about her
Now, does everyone in
And
Medusa Snakes have its own name?
yeah, yeah. Have you met Medusa? Is it one snake with multiple heads, or is it multiple snakes?
Not talking.
So yeah, they're not destined to be good friends. But again, in the redemption theme, we're seeing now Mariner acting as a mentor to Ollie
Mhm,
and
mhm.
giving her a second chance. So that was interesting. Okay, I think it's your turn to rate. We can either go with alt universe pads or flips.
Ooh, flips. Flips, absolutely flips. Stop saying flips. I'm gonna give this one I'm gonna give the same as the last episode. I'm gonna give this one an 8. I liked the secondary stuff a lot better than I liked the orbs versus cubes
Okay.
outright. Because that seemed almost like just a way to have the other stuff happen. So I really liked the episode. That's the part I could have almost done without. I did get a big kick out of the fact, but again, it's sold by what Ransom says. You know, one of my funniest lines in that episode when they formed the giant cube and giant sphere, and he's so anticipating what they're going to be, and it's just a giant cube and a giant sphere. You know, so
Right.
but yeah,
But you said you liked that or you didn't like
no,
that?
I like that joke. I just, the whole warring sides kind of thing. It just,
It felt like there were moments, I mentioned this before we started recording, that I was getting flashbacks of many different angles on this, one of which was Journey to Babel. Hey, someone died. We have to figure out who it was, and was it the delegates for this team or that team? Because at one point, Ollie says, maybe it was a sphere who murdered the cube. Maybe it was a cube dressed up as a sphere.
yeah.
Get all these theories. Before we make any accusations, we need evidence.
Well, she was making up everything because
Right.
she was trying to, just to clarify here, we have
Yep.
listener Diane saying Ronald B. Moore is also a real person. As we discussed, he was the visual effects coordinator who defined the look of the holodeck graphics.
That's it.
And as we said, the Joe Piscopo character was named after him. So it's
That's
kind of
an
weird if they
interesting
had a Ronald B. Moore and a Ronald D. Moore.
That was an interesting angle. Let's take one of our visual effects people and make a comedian character out of it. Okay.
And this just in. Side comment, Rutherford is officially the Star Trek universe's most eligible bachelor.
Maybe they'll cement the connection between him and the winter constellation lady.
No, I think they kind of had that moment, but they just realized they're just really good friends.
Okay.
Okay, so that's for me. Did you rate it?
I'm oddly enough, I think I'm on the other side of the coin on this one. I didn't really care for Boimler trying to be the alt universe Boimler. It's just we seem to be not progressing him forward in that vein. And
Tendy called him out on it, actually, even in the episode.
yeah, I did like, as I mentioned, the names of the cubes. They were very creative: Quadrilon, Rondus, Feronius, and I mentioned I loved some of the background things that you've got to watch for in this. It's well worth watching these shows twice because there's so many little things to miss. To Anna staring at Boimler with a lightning bolt up his backside. That's just funny to look at. Like, I did not really care for the line about the when, like I said, when the curtain came down when they announced, "Hey, we're also missing." What was her name? I had the Radion or
all the names are mushing together on my notes.
yeah,
Here.
I had it. I had it. I wrote it down. I can't find it, but the daughter of Sphironius, and that she went missing. And I went, oh man, I know how this is going to turn out. They're going to go to war, and we find out they were together. So I thought that was a bit disappointing in how it played out exactly as I saw, right at that moment. And to your point about when they were forming the giant orb and the giant sphere, the second time around, I thought that felt a little artificially added. Like, hey, we better put in some narration here of they could be turning into anything, but they just became a bigger cube and a sphere.
Yeah, I
To
for
me,
some
the
reason
first
also
time,
thought
the
it was.
second time, it felt a little forced.
I when I was watching it again, I did feel like the line was put in. I felt like the line said, "We need something going on here. This is taking a long time. We need something in there." But I just thought the line was great. That's like, they could be a giant ship. They could be,
Be anything.
they could be a vacuuming, maid. They could, yeah, anything.
I just watched that last weekend.
But they turn into just bigger versions of what they already are. So there you go.
Yeah. May the Schwartz be with you. So I'm lowering this one down to a 7.25 flips.
Okay.
I don't know how you do a quarter flip without landing on your head, but
Well, Boimler obviously can do it.
he did more of a half flip.
The judges are rating him harshly on that one. All right. And with that, we are done with these 2 episodes. So now we only have 4 episodes left of Lower Decks.
Forever.
Mm-hmm.
That was of Gods and Angles. So what do we have left? We have Fully Dilated, The New Next Generation. Let me put these in order. Number 7 is Fully Dilated. Number 8 is Upper Decks, which should prove interesting. Number 9 is Fisher Quest. And number 10 is The New Next Generation.
Which reminded me something I wanted to say is that we had this running theme about those riffs in the first couple of episodes. No mention at all of them in either of these episodes.
So they could come back.
Well, yeah, and I think they've done this before when they have a thread going through the entire season. Sometimes it just drops out in the middle, almost like we want you to forget about that for a while, and then we'll get back to it. But too late. We're already thinking about it. Especially with an episode called Fisher Quest. I think we kind of forced to think about it. All right.
Another long episode.
Indeed. Well, we in essence had 3 episodes to talk about because really that's short. It's so jam-packed with stuff.
Yeah, it was.
And people have been speculating about it, all over the place. I tell you, the only you can fight me on it. The only speculation the only comment I don't like about it is like, oh, first good Trek in the past 20 years because they're bad.
Yeah.
Go away from me. Go away from me. You sit over there and talk to yourself.
Yep.
All righty. But that said, it's time to refill the dilithium chamber and try to warp on out of here. So let's see who speaks for you guys, he said questioningly.
Oh, I will.
Okay, good job. Whew.
I was seeing, was this a test?
And you have failed.
You can catch Craig and me doing a show called Technorama over at chuckchat.com. We have been a little busy with family and other matters of late. Not up to our usual average shows per month, but we try to do these on Sundays. We are dedicated to doing one this weekend, which will be November 24th. We'll be recording it there and releasing it the following week. Hopefully get a few more in during the holidays, where we do a show about science, sci-fi, nerd news, just a couple of weirdos hanging out with their corn dogs. That didn't come out nearly like I
No, boy, that's wow. How do I follow that up? I don't
crashed at the end.
Yeah, you were going great and then didn't stick the landing. Why did I even say that? Anyway, you can find me, Clinton, at Comedy Forecast, all one word, the number 4.com. And I also have not been putting out episodes lately because things have been crazy for me. And I'm still working on the big story. And I'm torn. If I stop to write regular episodes, that pushes the big story out even further. So I'm trying to really just stay focused on doing that. And hopefully something will be on its way to everybody soon. All right. With all that said, let me get myself over here again.
We need the music.
We do need the music.
Roll the music, boys. I got to make sure I got the right fader so you don't get musicked over. There we go.
If you like the show, please be sure to tell a friend about it and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Follow us on X at The Topic is Trek, visit our Facebook page, or call us at 816-TREKKER. That's 816-873-5537.
Good number.
Until next time, on behalf of Chuck, myself, and the vacationing Craig, I'm Clinton, thanking you for listening. And as we always say here on The Topic is Trek, don't put on
the red shirt.
Craig didn't put on the red shirt, did he?
I don't know. And the audio recording has concluded.
Beep boop.
Hailing frequencies closed. There would. Now hailing. Twice as much fun.
I like I don't remember which iteration of Trek it was, where someone was talking about how when someone was at a console, they would get notes about don't keep pressing the buttons, because every time you would press the button, somebody had to put in a sound effect.
Oh,
So it's like,
just do like
only when you need to press the button, press the button. So right now we need to press the button ourselves so we can give you the rest of your Friday, and happy Pizza Friday to everybody out there.
yes, it's Pizza Friday.
And yeah, pizza should be waiting. And we will talk to you in 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Stay safe.